Good evening, everybody. We'll get the meeting started, seeing that there's quorum tonight. I will read the public meeting notice of collection. We do have, I believe it's one public meeting tonight and a number of business items on the regular council meeting, regular planning committee meeting. Notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision in this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning and Development. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public in the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. An exception to this rule is combined reports, which consolidates the public meeting and comprehensive reports. These applications are deemed by staff as straightforward and routine. The business practice has been in place for a number of years and is received by the applicants as efficient customer service and effective use of committee time. Please note that staff use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. Information gathered is then referred back to planning and development staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to the planning committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action. Lost my place. To this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on applications from the city perspective. Following council decisions, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or a public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the council, the corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. We'll move on to our first and only public meeting held tonight, number 12-2016 agenda. It's file number D14014-2018, a zoning bylaw amendment for the former St. Mary's on the Lake Hospital. The floor is yours.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, staff, members of the public. My name is Mike Keane, and I'm a land use planner with Foten Consultants, and I'm here this evening to present a zoning bylaw amendment on behalf of Queen's University. So many of you will know the property. It's the former St. Mary's of the Lake Hospital. And you can see from the map on the screen that this is a property that's very centrally located between both of Queen's campuses, the main and the west campus. It is within a largely residential neighborhood. Some of the immediate uses close to the former hospital include St. John's Home, Bellevue House, and sorry, I said St. John's, Sir John A. Macdonald's former house, the Isabel Bader Center, and there's also a synagogue close to the neighborhood. This is an area that's well serviced by public transit. In terms of the property itself, it's a 5-hectare property, which is slightly more than 12 acres of land. And as you can see, it has frontage on a number of streets. It's a through lot with its primary frontage being on King Street, its main entrance, and really a full block on Union Street, and it also has frontage on both on Ellerbeck as well. The existing building is 1 to 3 stories in height, and what is probably most well known about the property is its large parking area. 420 spaces exist today. So what's before this committee tonight is a proposal for a zoning bylaw amendment. And the purpose would be to allow the university to use the site. It would also be to allow medical clinics and medical uses. And it would be to reduce the parking stall size. But in terms of the buildings, there's no proposal to change any of the setbacks. Within the official plan, because this was a property that had long been a hospital, it's designated as an institutional use. And the institutional designation allows a wide range of uses, including schools and hospitals, military, penitentiaries. So with respect to the official plan, the proposal for the university to use this building is within the allowable designation. The way Kingston zones its institutional properties is largely with 3 ways. There's an E zone, an E1 zone, and an E2 zone. The E zone is a mixed zone that allows both hospital and university type uses, and it provides geographic areas where setbacks and heights are permitted. And then separately, there's an E1 zone, which is really largely a Queen's University zone, and E2 has largely been used as a hospital zone. So with the 2 distinctions, what it means is that because this was a hospital zone, we need a zoning bylaw amendment to allow Queen's to use the property. And because the plan is not to change the building, we're not proposing to change any of the setbacks or any of the standards as the property exists today. But this is a bylaw that would permit the university use, permit the clinic use, the medical use, and it would alter the size of the parking stalls to match the what I would call the more standard size that's being used in the city. So that just shows you kind of the uses in zoning bylaw language, universities, colleges, medical clinics, and then the dimensions of the stall size. From a broad perspective, this application meets the provincial policy statement and the intent of the OP. And so while this is a redesignation to permit a range of uses to the site, it's being done without altering any of the setback provisions. So the zoning bylaw to deal with the parking is really to allow for a more efficient configuration of the existing parking areas. Now, before we move into the questions, one point I'd like to bring to the committee's attention was that, and it's part of the public correspondence package that's at the back of the room today. Queen's University held its own meeting on site that was advertised on May 9th, and the meeting was held on May 22nd. And that meeting was held in the lobby of the former hospital, where we met with with neighbors to discuss interests and concerns. And just to kind of summarize some of the interests for the committee, there was obviously a broad interest to know how Queens intended to use the property. There was certainly some confusion with the parking amendments that were being proposed. There was a thought that the parking lot may be being expanded as opposed to altering the stall size. There was questions regarding the heritage status of the building, and there was a general desire for people to discuss how the parking may be used, regarding whether public would actually have the opportunity to use it. And those are kind of some of the general close to zoning site plan comments, and we had a good discussion about those items, and I'm sure some of those will come up. So I'm pleased to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Turning to the committee, I'm sorry, staff. I'm having a rough day of it today. Thank you.
Good evening. Pursuant to the requirements of the Planning Act, a notice of public meeting was provided in the form of signs posted on the subject properties 20 days in advance of the public meeting. In addition, notices were sent by mail to all 350 property owners within 120 meters of the subject site. A courtesy notice was also placed in the Kingston Winning Standard, and 2 phone calls and 1 piece of correspondence has been received and is included in the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, does anybody on the committee have any questions or comments? Yes, Councilor.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Yes, that's exactly the only comment that I've heard this week is the big grass area at the front of St. Mary's off of Union Street. Is that going to be converted into parking too, or how much of that grass area will be maintained?
Certainly. So through you, Mr. Chair, that area will be entirely maintained. There are no changes proposed at this time. Queens is intending to move its administrative function into the building. Anything beyond that will be a master plan exercise that would involve the community. So the grass is staying, the parking lot dimensions are staying, the trees are staying. It will stay on the outside as you see it today.
Great, and just a question about the parking. 480 spots really just to service the university staff that will be moving into St. Mary's, or will also staff or students be able to park there and then, like pay for their permit parking and then use it on the main campus if that's where they have to go? That was also a question that I heard this week.
Yeah, certainly. So through you, Mr. Right now, the parking lot has 420 spaces that, as they're painted today. The zoning bylaw amendment, which would reduce the stall width by 10 centimeters, would certainly, in the broad scheme of things, allow a few more spaces. Isabel Bader is right there to the south as well. So I think, I can't fully tell you how the parking will be used because it's not determined, but there has been, interest expressed in ensuring that some of that space is pay per use and not entirely permit, and I believe that's Queen's intentions.
Maybe just one about that. Right now, we can use that parking lot for the Isabel Bader Center and Performing Arts Center, and I just wondered, will that stay as part of the agreement? That's also a question that I heard this week.
My understanding is that will be. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Queens for the public meeting. I did have an opportunity to attend, and there were many interesting questions and answers. Thank you. So now I'll open it up to the public and give people an opportunity to ask questions. You have up to 5 minutes. Just give your name and residential address, if you would. Yes, if you want to just move up to one of these mics, that would be great. And it's counterintuitive. If it's green, it's not on. If it's red, it's on.
Great, thank you. I'm going to keep this short. but I am going to ask a question on the fire lane. Maybe some of these questions have been already asked. There's a fire lane on the west side of the older portion of St. Mary's. Is that going to remain?
I'm sorry, the protocol usually is they
Sorry.
collect all of the questions.
Okay.
And then they're answered at the end. I should have explained that. I apologize.
Okay, that's fine. That's one question. And around that question, it concerns the traffic on both King and Union Street. King Street, as everyone here knows, is horrendously busy. The Week Standard reported that in an editorial letter today. It's very, very busy. If I see traffic coming off of King Street going into St. Mary's, I see that as an additional burden on the traffic load on King. I also see that additional burden on Union Street. So you've answered my main question, which was how many spaces we're going to provide, and I guess it's 480, correct? Presently, we only have, this is going to be very short, presently we only have 2 parks in Sydenham Ward West of the main campus, one of which residents are eagerly looking forward to, and this is Breakwater Park. And that is, again, if we can safely access it through the maze of traffic. And the other is at the opposite end of Sydenham Ward West, Oak Ridge Park. Will Queens be looking out for the local community's interests as well as their own? And I'm talking specifically about the green space that exists right now. My major concern is how will green space be maintained on this site, and in fact, how could it be increased to serve the needs of the local community? I was hoping, quite frankly, that a developer would have purchased this property, and then the city could have extracted concessions from the developer in the form of a park or a similar green space project for the local residents, and might I add, students as well. Queens should be required to increase the green space in this area by reducing the size of the lot, especially if there are parking space size reductions. Green space is as a premium, and once built upon, will not revert to green space again. And I want to make that perfectly clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, Apartment 2, K7K 4J4. So thanks to Queens and the planners for the report and to the planner for the presentation tonight. A number of questions that aren't taken up yet by the discussion so far. I believe this is about a mid-1950s start of the hospital on that site. And my question is around the heritage aspects. Looking at a number of heritage files that have come through that committee, generally accepted as anything over 40 years can be considered for a heritage designation or discussion. So I would like to place a question on the record as to whether there's been any work done on that particular aspect. Certainly the facade that faces King Street is very attractive. It's very well-designed limestone, and I don't know the building that well, but there are probably interesting other heritage features in there, along with some more modern features. So that's my first question. Second question relates to the point that was just raised by the fellow before me on the green space, and the scenario I was looking at, given that green space in Sydenham district is at a premium, as this fellow was speaking about, and as we all know, Queens did a very interesting design with the Tyndall Field, where they have a sports field with parking buried underneath it. And I'd like to have the parking retained on this site, because I think it's going to be necessary for the new use and also possibly for the community. But maybe just more of a long-term thing, looking at a scenario where you have an increased green space up top, and then you have buried parking underneath to be accessed from Union. So I'll just place that on the record now as an interesting idea going forward. Now, just back with the parking, you're looking to reduce the number of the size of the spaces by a little bit. And I'm a little bit confused. There's 420 there now, and I heard the number 480 also talked about. So is that difference of 60 spaces the increase that we're going to be seeing if the reduction in parking space size gets approved? And as my final question is, I'm wondering under this application whether there could potentially be a new residential use with the property now. It was used as a hospital. There could potentially be, student resident space put in there. I didn't see that in the report, but it is an interesting possibility. So I'm not up to expert level on zoning and what that entails, but I'm just wondering if that is a possibility that could be utilized going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there another person that would like to speak? Yes, if you want to just come to any of these mics up here. I'm sorry. Right there is good. I steered you wrong. I'm sorry.
Thank you. My name is Roland Billings. I live at 31 Ellerbeck Street. First, a couple of things. I appreciate Queens taking the time to meet with us at St. Mary's of the Lake a couple of weeks ago. That was very informative and a good opportunity, and this opportunity as well. One clarification point before I get to the question. The orphanage part of the hospital was built in 1908, so you're a little bit better than your 40 years there. The clinics part is another thing to applaud you for if that does happen. Anybody that has had to try to get someone in and out of the clinics that are currently housed at Hotel Dieu, certainly the opportunity to have the parking, the accessibility at St. Mary's is a plus. Biggest concern that I have, and this is the question, you mentioned at the meeting that we had at St. Mary's that your master plan is coming up in the next couple of years. And what I would ask is that future consideration, the consultation with the neighborhood is important for us on that front as well. I know you answered the question at that time about residents and that wouldn't be practical for the model that you're currently using at Queens, but certainly that's something that as a residential area, we would certainly have some concern about. So the question would be, is Queens going to be looking for neighborhood consultation as you look forward for your master plan activity in 2019 and beyond? And certainly the use of the area for parking for the Bader Center, if that could be publicized with the Bader Center, that would be nice, because certainly, as you know, anybody that's attended anything at the Bader Center, Ellerbeck Street seems to be the primary place to park. So certainly getting that word out would help all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Any further questions or clarifications from the committee? No? Oh, I apologize. I've had an almost sleepless night, so I'm in a bit of a fog today. I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the parking space number question first of all, because the number 480 got thrown around, and I'm not going to throw Councillor Osanek under the bus, but that was a number she asked me was 480. The number of parking spaces is 420. The reduction of stall size by 10 centimeters, which is like the width of my hand, I have to say I can't imagine that we would get 60 more spaces, even as large as this site is. Maybe 10 or 15 extra spaces. So just for 100% clarity, there are 420 spaces on the site. We haven't actually drawn up what it might look like with the lines repainted, but it certainly, I can't imagine that 60 more spaces would be possible on this site. So I just want to point that clarity out right away. With respect to access, ingress, egress, fire accesses, at this point in time, there is no plan to make changes to the way the site operates. I mean, Queens going through any exercises of changing those things would get picked up by a site plan control application if there were changes to entrances that would pick that up. Totally respect the comment regarding the need for green space in this area. And it's a note that, you know, Queens representatives are here in this room. I know they're taking notes and I'm taking notes. So it's a comment that we can certainly use and apply in the master plan process. There were comments about heritage, and at the present time, as was pointed out, the building was actually built over a number of years. The earliest parts pre-1910. I believe there was an addition in 1920, and then 1950, and then 1970 is kind of the latest hospital addition. So as Mr. Dixon pointed out, anything over 40 years has the potential to be examined from a heritage perspective. At the present time, there are no listings or designations of parts or any of the buildings on this property. There was a question with respect to, you know, could the property be used for residential use? And yes, it could be. You know, there is the potential. However, one of the points that was made very clear at the meeting we had on May 22nd was that, you know, from a logistics standpoint, kind of like how we have zoning rules, Queens has its own rules regarding where its residences can be. And this location is outside of the walking distance from either the West Campus or the main campus to qualify as, you know, a dorm use. But that's not to say if, let's say, you know, a particular school moved into the building where all of your classes were located, you know, within this building, there would be the potential that you could have dormitory there. All that would be a part of that master plan process that at the earliest will start in 2019. So the immediate use of the building is for administrative purposes. So if you think in simplest terms, if the school is academic and it's administrative. So academic is running the programs, they need to be on main campus, while administration is everything from new projects to building maintenance. That's what will operate out of this site in some capacity. And certainly because of the former hospital use, that's why we've suggested leaving clinics as a permitted use on the property, simply because the building makes sense to continue to do that. Master plan process is as big as a City of Kingston official plan process. There will be vast and extensive consultation held with the neighborhood by the university. And it would be not just this property, it would be other properties as well. I don't believe I have left anything out other than, you know, maybe to acknowledge the traffic interests. Those are matters that are equally important to Queens in terms of how they operate the site. I'm pleased to respond to any further questions of the committee.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from the committee? Yes. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. And through you answer the question about the fire lane?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, I said at the beginning that at the present time, there's no plan to change like the entrances and accesses and fire lanes. So the current plan would stay as is. There's no plan to change that right now. And what I also noted was that if there were changes to the lane and the way it accessed either King or Union, if those moved at all, those would be site plan applications that would be required.
Okay, all right, great. I just want to make a comment that I think this is a very good project, and I think since it's such a, with the parking, I think you're freeing up a lot of space for Queen's University as a whole, and it's going to alleviate some of the parking problems that you may already have in the Queen's University district. So I think it's good, and I also think it's a good idea that Queen's can secure this location as a building and to develop it. So I think you're very lucky, and I think it's a great opportunity for Queens. So Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll bring this public meeting to a close. Thanks, everybody. We'll move on to our regular agenda. The regular planning meeting number 12-2018. I'll call this meeting to order. Looking for approval of the agenda. Councillor Sinek, Councillor Turner, all those in favor? Carried. Confirmation of minutes, that the minutes of Planning Committee meeting number 11-2018 held Thursday, May 17th be approved. Any comments or questions? No? Councillor Turner, Councillor Sinek, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to delegations, which we have none of, and one briefing. Peter Hugenboss, Director, Real Estate and Environmental Initiatives, and Saru Bajwa. Thank you. I should have asked that question sooner. I apologize. Will be the Land Development Manager will be present and speak to the committee regarding the highest and best land use study for Kingston Norman Rogers Airport final report. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to kick things off just quickly before I turn things over to Saru to give a briefing on the report. A few years back, the airport management team came to us looking for help on where to take this study. So we were happy to apply our experience that we have in-house on developing our business parks and selling our lots and our city-owned business parks. And we wanted to take that knowledge that we know about servicing, zoning those business park plans and apply that to what is possible at the airport. And of course, the airport's a little bit different than our typical business parks because it's something that the city will always own. We're not interested in selling land there, which is different from the business park lot sales, and that it takes a special kind of user to be located at the airport. And of course, we have a solid base of business already at the airport, and they're tenants of the city. And we knew that we wanted to work with those stakeholders to find out where can we take the airport further, who would be interested in investing. And of course, there's a lot of land at the airport. So where best to focus efforts on services, on marketing, to take advantage of a lot of space, and where does it make sense to leave things alone. So a lot of good research, a lot of detail that Saru will just touch on tonight because it is a lengthy report in your package. But this is that first step in that process for staff and council to accept this report so that we can get to the next stages, which involves land development, public planning processes, budgeting, marketing, a lot of details to get us that point where we know how to market our employment lands. This is that first step to get there if we see opportunities come to the airport. So without any more, I'm going to turn it over to Saru.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and members of the public. I'm Saru Bajwa, Land Development Manager with City's Real Estate and Environmental Initiatives Group. So I'm going to give you a synopsis of highest and best land use study for Kingston Airport. I'll start with the overview of the study, and then what are the opportunities we are looking at, where can these be located, the timing, and how and who is going to implement these. The city retained Explorer Solutions through request for proposal process. Explorer Solutions has a very extensive experience in aerospace industry, and they presented a unique approach to highest and best land use analysis. The objective of the study is to establish an action-oriented phase development plan, which will guide future land development at the airport. Like Pete mentioned, from our experience with employment lands, we have learned that serviced land is a vital factor in attracting investments. So the goal over here is to service airport land so that we can attract more investment over here. Highest and best land use typically means the most profitable use, but it's not the same goal that city has. City's intention is community development, and all over here we have underlying goals over here that we want to make sure that it contributes to the economy, to quality of life, it protects the environment, and it contributes to airport service levels. And so keeping that in mind, we had refined the evaluation parameters which are used to evaluate land, and all this detail is available in Exhibit D of the Planning Committee report. So the white boundary over here shows airport land, and the study area is divided into 6 parcels. It excludes the area which is gray. That's the airport operations area, runways and taxiways. Total airport lands are 275 hectares, and the study area is approximately 117 hectares. So study area is almost less than half of the total airport lands. And even though it seems like it's less than half, but it is a lot of land, and it has a potential for development for many decades. Public engagement was a very important aspect of the study. We had 2 open houses, one held at the outset and the other one more towards the end when the consultants had drafted draft recommendations for the study. Both the open houses were well attended, and they were followed by online surveys. The results of the survey were uploaded on project-dedicated webpage, and they were utilized all through the study analysis. For this evening's Planning Committee report, we had sent emails to the attendees of the open house, and in addition to that, in addition to all the notification we did on the social media. One more thing, in addition to our open houses, the consultants did 2 focus group discussions and 30 one-on-one meetings with people, stakeholders in commercial and industrial sector who were interested in airport development. The consultants also did a very comprehensive review of past studies related to the airport. They did benchmarking analysis comparing Kingston with 5 other comparable airports. They did local and regional strength and assets analysis. In addition to that, they did a survey of 25 companies in aerospace sector in and around Kingston. So using all this extensive research and extensive public consultation, the consultants came up with 4 target sectors or development concepts which would be ideal for Kingston Airport. So I'll quickly give an overview of each of these concepts, starting with the first one, the Aviation Maintenance Center concept. This concept aims at attracting various companies which do various kinds of aircraft maintenance. And the vision over here is to have that different kind of maintenance at the airport so that it is a one-stop integrated service center for aircraft maintenance, which would be highly convenient for aircraft users. We have airside land, workforce, and a huge market that we can tap into. We already have one existing business which does maintenance, but it is in helicopter parts. It's AOG, very good business, but Kingston is one of the few regional airports not having MRO facilities, which is maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility. These are some of the images of typical MRO installations. So the city is not going to build these facilities, but will facilitate through providing serviced land. The second concept is the evolution, which is 3D or additive manufacturing. 3D manufacturing has a number of advantages over traditional manufacturing, especially when it comes to aerospace sector. For instance, you can create complex aircraft parts using a single production process. In addition to that, parts are lighter, which means lighter aircraft, and which means less fuel consumption and less GST emissions. So the aim over here is to attract research and development companies and organizations doing business incubation and prototype manufacturing and additive manufacturing specific to aerospace sector. Some examples, it would be more like office type development. Second is the green port concept. So sustainability is being embraced by various airports all over the globe. And the airports are making more commitments to be greener and more sustainable. So it's a huge sector. And the aim over here is to attract companies and organizations which do research and development, prototype manufacturing, and business incubation in sustainable technologies specific to aerospace sector. For both Greenport and Evolution, we have many local partners, and it's also, both the concepts are well aligned with Council's strategic priorities. Here are some typical examples of installations. It also includes renewable sources of energy, such as solar photovoltaic panels. The last one is general aviation center concept. So Ontario has a very strong general aviation community. At the airports, also we have 2 thriving businesses. So this concept is this is building on that strength. And the vision over here is to attract general aviation community and serve it through through various purposes, for instance, recreation, entertainment, aircraft storage, flying clubs, and flying schools. Some typical images of the installations. So these are great ideas, and next is where are we going to locate them at the airport? I'll start with Parcel 1. Parcel 1 is south of our airport operation area. There are a number of existing buildings and tenants on Parcel 1. We have one vacant land over here, which is vacant parcel, which is east of the terminal building. And there are 2 hangars. These hangars are being used for general aviation uses. But these hangars are very old. They are from World War II, and they need consistent maintenance. So the study proposes that the users of these hangars, the tenants, be relocated on Parcel 5 once Parcel 5 is serviced. And this parcel being a prime land for commercial aviation, the aviation maintenance center concept would be ideal for this particular parcel. Parcel 2 has almost half of the lands are vacant, and the rest are being used for practice range, and there is a airport maintenance garage over here. Parcel 2 is ideal for uses such as high-tech manufacturing and research and development, and it would be an ideal location for Evolution and Greenport concept. The official plan designation of this parcel is business park, so the uses align with the business park designation as well. Parcel 3 is where Landings Golf Course is located. The study proposes to continue as a golf course. One is that golf course generates non-aviation revenue, so it is creating revenue diversification for the airport. And secondly, throughout our public engagement, people have expressed a preference for the golf course to be located over its current location. Parcel 4 is a prime location, corner of Bay Ridge Drive and Front Road. These are vacant lands, and they are suitable for hotel, office, conference center. The study proposes to continue as an undeveloped property because we have a lot of other land which needs to be developed, and once we have traction, then we might look at Parcel 4. Parcel 4 was acquired by the city in year 2000 as part of a land swap deal from the residential developer. And at that time, council had directed staff to look at development opportunities. And in year 2007, council had directed staff to change the zoning and official plan from residential to airport. And the official plan has been changed, but zoning is not. And the study proposes that the change can be part of comprehensive zoning bylaw exercise. Parcel 5 is the largest parcel on the airport. Initially, this parcel was 33 hectares. This dotted line shows the initial boundaries. During our first open house, we heard that public was concerned of proximity of potential development being close to the residential area. So the consultants looked at it and came up with this idea to extend the western and southern boundary more towards the runway. And now it's almost next to the taxiway, and it is further away from the residential area. It also includes a lot of cleared land. So what is shown over here is a development for next 20 years. It is only 20% of the parcel which is proposed for development. The consultants are proposing to start with the T hangars because T hangars do not require water and sanitary. So the initial investment would be low in terms of servicing. And once the interest builds in, then we can fully service the land closer to year 10. This parcel is going to have access from Bay Ridge Drive, and also the services would be from Bay Ridge Drive. So once the parcel is serviced, then the tenants from Parcel 1 can be relocated to Parcel 5. In addition, Airport Maintenance Garage and NAV Canada can also be relocated over here. Furthermore, Kingston Fire and Rescue has expressed an interest to locate the fire station over here because it would be better centrally located to serve the community. There's also a potential for neighborhood commercial services to serve the surrounding residential area, and this could be explored closer to year 10 when full servicing is recommended. Now, coming to the west side of the airport is Parcel 6. It's adjacent to Limon Point Conservation Area, so any kind of uses proposed over here should be ones which have minimal sort of impact on the conservation area. It's ideal for a green port, and a solar photovoltaic system is proposed on this parcel. So here is a holistic map of the airport lands showing the 4 development concept and where they can be located. The gray area is where no development is proposed for next 20 years, and phase 1 is in orange or yellowish color, and phase 2, 11 to 20 years, is in red color. So this is the same plan which was showed at the second open house, and the overall result of the survey showed that more than 50% of the respondents were supportive of the concept and their location on airport lands. Here is just one example of the question, which is support for a particular development concept on a particular parcel. And we had 55 to 68% respondents who supported it. 20 to 26% which do not support, and 11 to 19% were unsure. Next is the interim action plan. So we are a long way from putting shovel in the ground. A lot of work needs to be done, especially from land use planning perspective. And we can do some work, such as preliminary layout plans and checking the feasibility of solar on parcel 6. This could be done with internal resources, but for most part, for all the formal development review applications for marketing and business strategy, additional resources would be required, and the staff will come back to council for council approval and budget approval. This study is a roadmap which just shows future utilization of airport lands and also indicates the potential of airport lands to the market. We have the expansion project underway, so it's a good time to look at the airport holistically and take airport development to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saru. Any comments from or questions from the committee? Yes, Councillor Zanuck.
Several? Yeah. Thanks very much, and thanks also for moving the lands in parcel 5 further south, adding that extra land. That really helps. So if we could go back to that diagram that shows the blue and the orange and the red. With the fire station, would it be going in the orange or the red area?
So likely it will be the red area because
Okay.
Full servicing is going to be more towards year 10.
Sure.
After year 10, yes.
Okay. With the access road, does that have to be built to build the hangars and the GA center in red and orange?
So the intent over here, the parcel can only have access from Bay Ridge Drive. So that's why we have shown the access road over here, but yes, it's going to service rest of the area, but we don't know how this road will move around in the parcel because we haven't prepared any layout plans.
Okay, so when we're building, like in the construction is being done for the GA and for the T hangars, the access road needs to be built at that time, because that's in the short term, right? That's the next 5 years, so the access road will go there that soon?
So it's going to be, Pete can add to that, but it's going to be a number of years before construction is going to take place. It's, as I mentioned, we will prepare preliminary layout plans and then look into detailed design of roads and access. So once, I think it would be probably, if this is approved, then would be likely 2 to 3 years that we're looking at do construction.
Thank you. When we do take down hangar 4 and 5, just like when we took down hangar 3, we had to work with MNRF for the barn swallows. And I know that the barn swallows are also in hangars 4 and 5. Barn swallows, they come back every year to the same spot. So even though the city worked to deal through MNRF with the Lemoyne Point and built the barn swallow structures, this is the first year that those structures have come up, and the barn swallows are only going back to the airport. They're not actually nesting yet in the barn structure. So I just want to have that in the minutes that the city will have to, again, look at alternative nesting sites when hangars 4 and 5 are taken down, whatever year that occurs. We need to work with MNRF and remember that they're there. My next question is with regard to parcel number 6. So is the reason why, if that map can stay up, is the reason why it's like not actually on Front Road or closer to Front Road, is that because it would be too dangerous to be in front of the runway? Like, to me, it just makes more sense to have it closer to Front Road, because that takes it more into the roadway and the parking lot area of Lemoyne Point, instead of going right up adjacent to the Lemoyne Point lands where there are significant wildlife there?
Yeah, good question. These parcels were laid out from the airport master plan, and based on the federal regulations for air travel, it is has to be set back from the runway. We have airport staff if we need to get more technical, but if these are conceptual lines, so if there is a potential for a solar installation and it's practical to move it closer, then that can be explored at that detailed design. But at this time, these parcels are laid out based on what is a permitted area for development on an airport.
Great, thank you. And last question for you, Mr. Chair, is about the solar electricity generated on Parcel 6. Is that supposed to go back into the airport?
So it's a good idea, and it's something that we want to explore. There's a lot of options. So it could be part of the city's goals for climate change and GHG reductions and offsetting some of our use. It could be used directly at the airport to power the airport. It could be used to supply redundant and emergency power through battery storage for the airport, because the airport needs power in a time of emergency. So all these things are we want to look at and leave nothing off the table right now, because the pricing for solar installations is coming down and making more sense financially to use it on site. So all that will be looked at, and it's interesting to know all the different applications it could have at the airport.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it may be reassuring, I can say the commissioner was nodding when you were talking about the swallows. So, yes, Councillor. Thank you.
I like the report, so well done, who are all involved, and yourself. Thank you for that. I'm very supportive of this development. So are the timelines just because it takes time, or if there's interested parties, like let's say, I like the idea of the hotel convention center on Parcel 4, I think, if I can read it. And is that because you have to develop it, we have to do a lot of work, or is that, what if someone was interested in that? Is that, can you move that up?
Yes, Peter's going to answer that.
Absolutely, there's options here. The city's in full control. The city owns the site, and it can move up development timelines to suit needs. But what we're trying to do is our best projection with the consultants, with all the research that was done, with the current passenger traffic through the airport, through the current businesses at the airport, that something like a development at that corner is likely a long way off at this point, and there are a lot of constraints to that development. And one of the ideas in the report is that it could be used as swing space for the golf course if other lands were needed that were closer to the terminal where the practice range is, and maybe there's a way to rework the golf course a little bit. So lots of different options, but this just sets out what the potential is and what the most likely timeline is at this point.
All right, thank you. That's well, it's really, I like the idea of the mixed, even the fire hall there off of Bay Ridge, and I can see why they might be thinking that. There's so many things that are good about it. I just want to commend you for it, and I'm excited to see things hopefully move forward a little faster, but obviously as things develop and as needs are, and so great job.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and through you. I'm the counselor for this district, and I'm really excited about this report, and I thank you so much for everyone that was involved in this. This is a great report, and it's a great handbook, actually, to start a lot of work, and the sooner the better. I'm really excited about this, as you can hear. I have a question, though, about the Parcel 5, and I was thinking we need the T hangars as soon as possible, because I know the state of the other hangars, and we need them quickly. But if we were to put the T hangars over there, and let's say some charters came in from, dropping off students or whatever, how would these people get somewhere? Would we have taxi service over there? Like, I'm just thinking it's sort of in an odd place, because we'd have to have the services that would support planes coming in. Or if we had pilots that flew in and wanted to see the city, we would need rental cars or taxis, again, over in that area, or bathroom services or other amenities that would service that. So is there some way we could get like shuttle cars or a roadway? Or I just think we need to think about that carefully. Instead of having to drive all the way around and back, it just adds a lot of time constraints to it.
I'll just take a response to that. A lot of details would need to be considered, but with the planes coming in, there are concierge services currently at the airport for planes and pilots coming in. So they still have to come in through the runway and then taxi to the hangar location. So there are services available on the main taxiway at the terminal site, the south end of the airport. And the thinking is with the T hangars is a way to dip the toe in for the city to for wherever the investment comes from, is to bring in access into that area to generate development that is needed, but it isn't the full rate of cost where water and sewer can be brought in afterward and it's just a road. But there still is that connectivity on the airport site by plane, just not by passenger vehicle. But it could be looked at with the airport team when we get to that stage.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Also, I think it's a great economic development study as well, so I think it can be used for multiple purposes. And I thank you very much, and I really appreciate all the time and effort you've put into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an excellent briefing. I appreciate that. We'll move on to the first bit of business. The portion of the meeting is open to the public. The city has initiated a new process in which members of the public will have the opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on comprehensive reports presented before the Planning Committee. Those wishing to provide oral comments at this meeting will be invited to do so. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting to make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. I believe, is that what I should be reading at this time? Because for this recommendation as well? Because I thought this was for Planning Act, but it wouldn't apply, I don't believe, to this issue because it's not a Planning Act. It's not a Planning Act submission. Is that accurate? We'll take that under advisement with City. I believe that that's the case. As I was reading that, I was confusing myself because that refers to comprehensive reports that have come out of a public planning act submission, and this is something very different. So that everything I just said, disregard with this particular application because I don't believe it applies to this. And so we'll move on to the first bit of business, which is highest and best land use study, which we've just received a briefing on. And it's, here we are, sorry. The recommendation is that the Planning Committee recommend that Council endorse, in principle, the highest and best land use study for Kingston Norman Rogers Airport, YGK, final report, dated April 2018, as amended by the City of Kingston staff, attached as Exhibit A to report number PC 18-014, and that Council direct staff to proceed with the implementation of the highest and best land use study and commence work on the interim action plan activities that can be completed with existing resources in accordance with the approved budgets, and that further implementation projects be brought forward to council in future budgets for consideration and approval. Great. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Because this is a formal recommendation, and this may confuse some members of the public even more. The public do have an opportunity on formal recommendations to speak to any recommendation up to 5 minutes, but it isn't in accordance with any Planning Act processes. So, having confused myself and everybody else, I'll invite the public to make comments if they wish. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to staff for the extensive report and presentations tonight and the debate we've had so far. I followed the public consultation process, going to both meetings and staying up with media coverage and the debates at council. So I'm going to begin with some smaller points and then work up to something fairly big. So one of them is a question about something that's already been raised with potential new fire station use. And the question is, whereabouts is the closest existing fire station that we have currently in operation? I just want to get a picture in my mind's eye as to the efficiency of this potential new use. If you have a new fire station, you could be closer to emergency uses that you're going to be putting in, right? So that's where that is. Just have a little bit of an objection to the characterization of the practice range as being vacant, right? It is being used as part of the golf course operation. So it's vacant in terms of not being having anything built on it. So that's a little bit of a confusing, I guess, characterization. The next question is, where are we now with respect to the renovations that have been actually approved by council? Right, we got the new runway, or an extension of the runway, north-south one, going in for 1,000 feet. That was approved. And then we have airport terminal improvements. So I'm just wondering where that is. Have we actually started construction on either of those two? My next point...
Excuse me, if I apologize for interrupting, but we should be addressing issues as they relate to the proposal before us. And we've had public consultation and public meetings regarding the airport expansion, and those have been have been approved by council. So questions such as that can go through the commissioner as a public inquiry, but it doesn't relate to the business that's before us now.
With all due respect, Mr. Chair, I was going to tie that question into a point that was definitely relevant as far as what was raised tonight as an alternative use.
I'm
Could
afraid
you allow me to continue on that?
I'm going to rule that out of order because we need to focus on the business and the report and recommendations that are before us. I apologize, but it's an 800-page agenda that we have to get through tonight. So,
okay.
Thank you. So please keep it
all right.
Focused on this issue.
With one of the concepts that you introduced as a new use, you got 3 of them, the Airport Maintenance Center, right? So this is very interesting. Does that require an extension of the runway to be a viable operation? Right now the runway is 5,000 feet. You want to go to 6, right? So you can have bigger planes. All right. Now, the next one is big, and the chair may rule me up. Okay, but actually, the public survey you produced, right? So that's very interesting as well. That isn't actually a scientific public survey, though, right? Because you could have a user log in more than once. right? It isn't as, like, say, today is election day in Ontario, each person has a chance to vote once. So it could be actually flawed in that respect. I just want to point that out, speaking as a math person. Now, my last point is I think, very significant. And you're talking about highest and best use of the land, right? But no scenario other than the airport existing on that land has ever been examined. Is that an accurate characterization? And we got a lot of public dissent over what happened with the consultation process, right? There are a lot of points that were raised, and the vote at council was very contentious. There was a lot of discussion there. So the reason I'm raising this is because we actually have another airport that's partially within the city.
Excuse me, I'm going to rule this whole discussion out of order because it doesn't address what's before us. Talking about alternative possible uses beyond uses as an airport. It is an airport. This is an airport study that's come to us that's very specific. So we're not about to start a broad conversation about alternative sites for airports. That isn't the business that's at hand or doesn't relate to the recommendation before us.
May I just make one more point? In that the initial public consultation, though, was flawed because you never looked at anything else that could happen there.
Excuse me, I've ruled that out of order.
All right.
I'm going to rule you out of order if you continue to ask questions that are totally irrelevant to the recommendation before us. Thank you. So, any further questions or comments on the recommendation that's before us? Seeing none, we'll go back to the committee. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I want to thank you again for an excellent report, and I look forward to this coming to council. Thank you.
Wait, Mr. Chair, don't we have a vote on the, like, we need to move her in?
Yes, I was about to call the vote on the recommendation. Oh, yes, absolutely. I really apologize. This is me fighting a sleepless night here, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll answer the question that the member of the public asked relative to the fire station. The existing fire station in the vicinity is the Reddendale Fire Station on Days Road. That fire station would be closed. It's a vintage that it should replace in terms of it's probably at this stage it's been revamped, but it probably would need to be replaced in the future and replaced by the one at the airport site. So it's the same neighborhood.
Thank you very much. So we'll return. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Hugenbus.
Sorry, there's a few more questions that I wanted to address. So duly noted, the practice range, although it has no above ground building improvements, it isn't vacant. It is a tenant that uses it, and it's we recognize it as a valuable piece of their operation. And we have a good relationship with the landings, and we plan to continue that relationship. The maintenance center does not require any extension to the runway beyond what's already planned. It is for aircraft that could access the airport. And I don't really have a comment on the public survey. I do concede that it is not to the same standard as a provincial election, but I think we got an average of 400 responses for each of the questions. I think that number is 6 in my head, and we were happy with all the public engagement and the turnout at the meetings and online in the stakeholder groups. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to the committee. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in...
I have an amendment, so I would seconder, and then I can move my
I'm
amendment.
sorry. Go ahead. Move Sanik, seconded by Turner. This is just to get the
Just
motion
to put it on the floor.
Yes, I've confused everybody now. But I understand there's an amendment coming. Councillor Sanik.
We have a seconder to put it on the floor?
Yeah.
Okay,
there is a
perfect.
second. All
Okay.
those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my amendment. 2016, when we had the public meeting, concern all along, and this is the amendment I want to do. There's a beautiful ambience as you drive south, or like in Lower Bay Ridge Drive, as you come off of the commercial areas of Days Road, of Gardner's Road, come down Bay Ridge Drive. You have the residence, and then you have the woodland, and then you have the runway, then you have the golf course, and then you can see the water. And I don't want that ambience broken. So where we're going to put the future neighborhood services area, I just want as much as the tree line along Bay Ridge Drive on the west side maintained as possible. That's my big thing. If we think this is not possible, we need to then look at the maps of Mississauga. So there's McLaughlin Road. It's a commercial business park area in Mississauga. There's homes on one side. You can't even tell that there's homes. I'll submit this, Mr. Clerk. You can't even tell there's homes. You can't even see really the businesses because they got a beautiful buffered area of trees and grass between the business park and the road, which would be very similar to what we're going to be looking for this future neighborhood services area. So my amendment, which I have given the clerk, is that just at the end of the first clause of the recommendation, we just add the word, oops, I'm in the wrong email. Provided that the existing tree line along Bay Ridge Drive is maintained as a border between the road and the future neighborhood services. And I'm looking for a seconder, if possible.
Seconder, Councillor Sanik's motion. Councillor Oosterhoff. Thank you very much. It's just about to be put up on the screen, but go ahead, Councillor Turner.
Okay. This is sort of out of my depth here. Are we allowed to put an amendment to this, and how would it affect the project, and is this possible? Question to staff. Clerk.
I believe, we'll ask that of the clerk, but I believe all recommendations that come to us, amendments are allowable from this floor. If it happens to pass and you're not happy with it, you could always, when it comes to council, by way of a report, the planning report, you can always request that it be amended back to the original form. But it is in order to ask for amendments. It isn't in order when we have recommendations from consultants and it's their professional work. We can't amend that at that point other than making separate recommendations. So this would be in order. I'm looking to the, I believe this would be in order. Yeah.
Can I ask if this is a possibility that we could incorporate the trees in the development process on this parcel of land in the future? Is it difficult to do? It looks like a nice one. I don't want to tie our hands.
Yeah. Yes.
The short answer is yes. We believe we can accommodate this as long as the intention from council is that not every single tree has to survive any sort of development there. I agree with the councillor. It does look really good there, and there are lots of good examples. Mississauga is one, but in the U.S. as well, you can't even see the Walgreens from the street because they've retained the trees. So other than potentially some access locations or topography closer to the development, I think it's acceptable for the plan at this stage and should be accommodated by staff in going forward with future design options for the site.
Okay, thank you. Comments from staff? That's good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments on the amendment, I'll call the question on the amendment.
I think we need a seconder, right? Oh, really?
Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Oosterhoff seconded it. I got your back. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we're back to the recommendation as duly moved and seconded. No thanks to me. All those in favor? As amended, carried. Thank you very much. And thanks again for that presentation. We'll move on to item B, which is a recommendation from regarding 294 Rideau Street. Okay. And so the recommendation as presented is before us, 294 Rideau Street. Is there any member, any questions from the committee? Seeing none, any questions from the public or comments? Seeing none, mover and a seconder. Pardon me? I asked and nobody raised their hand. Yeah, no problem. So it's contagious. So mover and a seconder. I think Councillor Oosterhoff wants to get his name in the minutes. Moved by Councillor Oosterhoff, seconded by Councillor Turner. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. We'll move on to, did we just jump from? Oh, sorry. There we go. 605 Princess Street, the Podium Developments, and that's file number D35-005, 2016. And again, it is a recommendation that's before us, and we'll ask for a short briefing from our staff, and then we'll open it for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of Planning Committee, public, fellow staff. My name is Jason Sands. I'm a planner with the City of Kingston, and I've been managing this project for the last couple of years. It's a bit of an overview because, as you can see, it's a 2016 file. And I just want to mention right now at the onset of the presentation that the focus of tonight's presentation is to not exactly get into the specific detail of every single piece of it, rather provide how it was such an iterative process that involves staff, members of the public, external peer reviewers, as well as the city's advisor, Mr. Brent Todderin, through the processing and refinements of this application. So as mentioned, the project is located at 575 to 611 Princess Street, as well as 510 Frontenac Street. And at that site, the applicant's proposing to seek an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the construction of a 10-story building. That building is to be mixed use, residential and commercial, with 359 residential dwelling units, 565 bedrooms, and 900 square meters of commercial space at grade. The commercial space at grade is to be at each end of the building, wrapping the corners of Frontenac and Albert Street. I also want to point out at this time that as part of the proposal down here on the corner of Frontenac and Princess Street, the applicant is proposing to convey a parkette at 149 square meters to the City of Kingston for the purposes of parkland dedication. This image here is actually the landscape plan that was submitted in support of the proposal, but I thought it was a good one to show from a higher level as to what the actual plan is. The red line around the perimeter of the property is the site itself. You can see a lot of the rooftop amenity as well as the terraces that are proposed on the site. Shows the parkette, vegetation that's proposed in planters along Princess Street and Albert Street, and the double row of plantings along Frontenac Street. Just a very quick chronology. The property is located in Williamsville in the community destination area, which is Area 2, as prescribed in the OP, the official plan. The Williamsville stretch, the Williamsville Main Street stretch, extends from Division and Princess Street up to Bath Road and Princess Street intersection. In terms of the dates, the key dates, this project was originally discussed in 2012 through a pre-application, so we're dating back 6 years. Applications were submitted in 2016. Through the processing of that, we've had 2 statutory public meetings here at Planning Committee through the iterations of that plan. And to complement that, there's been several open houses hosted by the Williamsville Community Association in which the applicant has presented the plan. So in advance of tonight's meeting, for regular meeting, there was substantial notice or notice that was provided in accordance with the Act, and it actually exceeds the requirements of the Act. So we did a public mail out to all the neighbors within the 120-meter radius. We provided the notice per the requesteds who signed in at the public meetings, and we've updated the signage that was on the subject property. Further to that, there was courtesy ads that were put in the newspaper. I may have should have started with this slide, but we're here now, and the site's located here at the intersections of Princess Frontenac and Princess and Albert, and it's outlined in white. Just very quickly, going to go through about 10 slides of existing photos of the site today. So this is a photo taken from the intersection of Princess and Frontenac Street. Another photo taken on the south side of Princess Street, looking north towards the existing development and on the subject property. Again, south side of Princess Street, looking north to the subject property, and you're starting to see the existing 3.5-story townhomes located further up on Albert Street in behind the subject property. Again, the intersection of Princess and Albert Street, you'll see the townhomes. Moving along west up Princess Street, looking back towards the site. This photo is taken from Albert Street. So Albert Street looking south, seeing the existing 2-story lower density residential development to the left, separated with the 3.5-story townhomes to the proposed development site, which is at the intersection and fronting Princess. Back to the eastern end of the proposed development site, so at the corner of Princess and Frontenac Street. Moving northward on Frontenac Street, looking at the existing church, which is known municipally as 512 Frontenac Street. This slide is focusing in on the lot line, the north lot line of the subject property abutting 512 Frontenac Street with the church on the right and the existing building on the subject property, which is proposed to be demolished to make way as part of the redevelopment plan for the site. The last photo of the neighboring context is this, facing north on Frontenac Street, to show that lower scale residential development or lower density residential development as you move further north beyond the church. Just quickly, in terms of the application and the relief that's being sought, Here's a map, an exhibit from our report and our official plan that shows the subject property and the site as being designated Main Street Commercial, which is identified in red. The surrounding neighborhoods, both to the north and the south of the Princess Street corridor, in yellow, are designated residential. So it is proposed through this amendment that the subject property be granted relief as it relates to angular plane, which is a provision that's prescribed in the Main Street Commercial designation of the official plan. With respect to the existing zoning, the subject property is currently entirely located in that C4-H with the T1. So that's a Main Street Commercial C4 zone with a holding symbol attributed to the site as it relates to servicing. And the applicant is proposing to amend that zoning, remove the holding symbol, as well as the temporary zone for surface parking, and propose a site-specific Main Street Commercial zone, a C4 555 zone. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, but we can revisit it with any questions that you may have following this quick presentation. Essentially, it summarizes the proposed relief with respect to that C4 zone that the applicant is seeking, primarily relating to height, angular plane, parking, and bicycle parking. As part of the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment to remove the angular plane requirements, the applicant is proposing to instill a height map, which is here in front of us on the screen. And the height map is one that can accurately address the complexity of the massing in the building as it specifically relates to all of the step backs that you see on the building. So the south side is Princess Street, and you see the large 3 indents or step backs into that building, and they all happen at different floors. So when we get into the elevation drawings, you'll see it more clearly, but it's a very tough building to regulate from a setback point of view, and it's much cleaner to do it with a map such as this for zoning interpretations moving forward. So through that 2-year processing and involvement within the community, there was multiple individuals who raised concerns, including staff and members of planning committee. And this is a quick summary of the most significant concern that was heard through that time. So building height, density, the design of the building, how much parking is actually being accommodated on site, whether the rear lane can be implemented. This building seems quite large. How is it going to transition into the lower density development into the neighborhood? Amenity space, servicing. Those were a lot of the themes that were received. So with that, I'm going to go through the next few slides in my presentation to try and illustrate how these changes have been made through the iterative process of this amendment and taken into fruition with the development. Before we get there, this is again a very detailed slide I'm not going to go through. It's summarizing the submissions. So the first column on the left side is all of the performance standards of the zone, talking about what's being proposed. So bedrooms, height, parking, bicycles, parkland, etc. And then as you move to the right of this table, it's submission 1, submission 2, submission 3. That table is essentially, in short, showing how the building is dropping in height, the units are decreasing, the FSI is decreasing, the on-site parking is increasing, but I'm more than happy to revisit that and explain that in detail should there be questions. In terms of the graphics, this was an illustration that was received as part of the first submission that showed the proposed building at 40.4 meters in overall height and 11 stories, and was seeking relief to amend the maximum height as prescribed in the official plan. This illustration is one that was received in the most recent submission, 2018 proposal, that showed a drop of approximately 10 meters in overall building height and a 1-story reduction from the total height to bring it down into a scale that is more in line with the policies of both the Williamsville Main Street study as well as our official plan. This slide here was originally introduced into the slide deck to try and show some changes with materiality on the front facade fronting Princess Street of the proposal as we went from submission 1 to submission 2 and 3. What I think it does a really good job of is showing the facade articulation and all the step backs that have been built in to that front elevation between the 2-year process of moving our way through the approvals. So you can see on the lower slide, the 4 main components of the building on floors 2 through 4 have been accentuated much greater than the iteration above. And what that is to try and break that visual mass. Although the plan seeks for a continuous street wall along the corridor, it's also expected that it read as multiple buildings. So this is a rendering to illustrate how in which that is being accomplished at all different stages of the building through floors 2 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 and 10. It should be noted at this slide that the applicant's proposing masonry cladding at different bands of the building. And the masonry cladding, as well as those lighter colors that are introduced at the upper stories, are specifically designed to try and make it blend in better and not read as 4 individual buildings that are completely unrelated, but they are it all is one building, but it looks as though it's 4. I do want to point out, we're at the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment stage through the approval process, and we're not at the stage of site plan control, in which we would regulate things such as masonry cladding, panels, glazing. Back to the first submission, again, this shows the facade articulation as you look down the Princess Street corridor from the intersection of Princess Street and Albert Street. And there's one consistent band of floors 2 through 4 of red brick with very limited step backs in that building. The next slide, which now shows the revised proposal, speaks to, again, those 4 blocks of the building that have been amplified through increased stepping. I believe it's 1.5 meters on each of those step backs to try and get that visual break as you carry through the bands of the building. So it does carry all the way through up to the uppermost stories. Again, this slide takes the same image, but it really does amplify the work that was done in breaking the mass and also the work that was done at grade. Within the Williamsville Main Street study and the official plan, at grade is required to be 60% glazed for windows, clarity, and try to create a street animation in the public realm. The applicant, through the initial submission, came in with, I think, 100% glazing. And it was actually requested by staff through the peer reviewers and the support of Mr. Todderan to introduce some materiality on that, to bring some of the mass down and create more of a visual to that at-grade pedestrian experience along the corridor. Also want to point out in the slide that the ground floor is a consistent 4.5 meter floor-to-ceiling height, which is one to accommodate the multiple commercial units that are proposed on each corner, and the gymnasium, the amenity space through the gymnasium is also proposed at grade, so it will work and function and feel like a proper and effective gymnasium with the correct ceiling heights. Again, another table to try and quantify numerically the changes of the submissions through the processing of the application. The number of bedrooms have dropped, the number of the square meters of gross floor area has dropped, as well as the change you can see in the number of dwelling unit types. This slide I thought was very good in illustrating the change as it related to the unit size. As this application was received in 2016, there was a substantial number of micro, what was the term? Micro studios. And the micro studios were approximately 270 square feet in size. And they were a fold-up bed that came down from the wall, and there was not a lot of room. At the time, there were 306 micro studios proposed. The plan has changed, I would say, so substantially that the smallest unit now proposed is 275 square feet. It's still small, but there's 18 of those units. Over to the next slide, next floor plan, there's 26 studios that are 310 square feet in size, and there's 170 what I would call a more typical size studio that's 362 square feet in size. So the other comment to make on this slide is that the original submission included several micro suites and studio apartments that did not have direct access to the outdoors through a window. Every single unit in this new proposal has a direct window to the outdoors. This slide, again, back to the concerns that were raised by members of the public and staff, were bicycle parking and on-site vehicular parking, as well as loading spaces. By definition and by requirement of the bylaw, the applicants required 2 loading spaces, which are being proposed and fully compliant. The number of vehicular parking spaces on site is a balance, and the applicant is proposing a 0.52 ratio for vehicles to dwelling units. Staff had the supportive traffic analysis and parking study that was submitted, peer-reviewed by an external third-party professional who deemed the 0.52 parking ratio appropriate given the context of the proposed building, as well as a 1-to-1 bicycle parking ratio. The applicant is proposing to exceed the 1-to-1 bicycle parking ratio by providing 379 bicycle parking spaces on site. And I also want to point out that a portion, I believe 42 bicycle parking spaces are proposed to be outdoor and uncovered. So through the amendment, the applicant is requesting that permission, which has been supported by staff as well as the peer reviewer as it relates to short-term bicycle accommodation on site for users who may want to use the commercial units at grade and not go into the underground parking to store their bikes. The biggest way in which the parking on site was increased was a second slab of underground parking was introduced through the iterations of the plan. I'd also like to point out that the on-site barrier-free parking spaces that are proposed are fully compliant with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the new provincial legislation commonly referred to as AODA. There was concern related to angular plane and transition into the surrounding neighborhood and the existing sites immediately north of the subject property. So this illustration on the screen provides the graphic as it is along Albert Street. So the top graphic shows essentially an 87-degree angular plane which has a very vertical rear wall and very limited transition and step backs to the 3.5-story townhomes that are located directly adjacent to the proposed site. The lower image shows that angular plane with the step backs that were cut out of the rear portion of the main building beyond the 4th story to reduce that angular plane requirement to 69.5 degrees. This illustration is the opposite street. So on the east end of the site, the building abuts the church at 512 Frontenac Street. The original plan at the top of your screen was proposing a 6-story street wall that carried across to a 0-meter setback adjacent to the church that went up and had no stepping. So in the most recent iteration of the plan, the 4-story street wall is continuing across and along Frontenac Street, which wraps the corner of Princess, and then the multiple step backs at floors 6, 8, and 10 to meet the intent of the 45-degree angular plane provision prescribed in the official plan. This illustration relates to a rear lane, which was a very contested issue at the initial onset of the application. Through the original plan that did not include a rear lane to the requirement in the official plan that does require it. So through the revisions, the applicant has been able to shift a portion of the building on the right side off of Frontenac Street, allow for a drive-through area where the building does extend over and beyond to the lot line, but the rear lane is accessible through the site. It's important to note that the parking spaces are accessed where this number 2 is. Sorry, the underground parking spaces are accessed down through here, and number 3 is where the loading spaces, the 2 loading spaces are at the back of the building. And there are limited surface parking as well back here and across the back of the building for more of a short-term parking as opposed to the longer-term underground parking. So with respect to community benefits, applicants who are seeking an increase in density and or height are subject to Section 37 of the Planning Act. And as the applicant here is seeking that permission, the city will be provided approximately $230,000 in the form of community benefit. It should be noted that this money will be held in trust, and it can be utilized towards contributing to features such as greening of Frontenac Street as well as Albert Street, which are identified in our official plan and here on Schedule PS1 as priority green streets in the Williamsville neighborhood. I also want to point out at this point that the parkland conveyance on the corner of Frontenac Street and Princess Street is entirely separate from this community benefit contribution. So the parkland at 149 square meters will be conveyed to the municipality, as well as approximately $229,000 for community benefits to green the streets. This is a quick illustration to show a more detailed sketch of that parquet that is proposed. And you can see that the applicant in the corner, southeast corner of the building, is proposing that retail unit or commercial unit at grade, which has the ability to then spill out onto the parkland and really animate that space. It should also be known that confirmation has been received that the parkland will be developed and programmed with the input of the community. The Parks Department will be conducting a public consultation process to obtain the input from citizens of the area to understand what that space may want to look like. So in conclusion, staff have a recommendation in front of you tonight that the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment be approved, as it is our opinion that it complies with the provincial policy statement, the official plan, and the Williamsville Main Street study. It's the opinion of staff that the proposed development represents desirable and good land use planning. And should the application receive approval for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, the next step would be site plan control, and applications for that have not yet been submitted and would be required to go through the full process. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So we'll begin with questions from the committee. Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff.
Just really small, but the road that you mentioned goes in the back, the service road. It goes to that park where the number 2 is there. How are you going to get parking underground if you weren't going to have a road? There wasn't a road proposed before, or a driveway? Is it the only access to underground parking off the street is through that road?
Yeah, sorry. It was always proposed to be one level of underground parking.
Right.
And there was always proposed to be a portion of that rear lane to be accessible for vehicles.
Right.
But it wasn't originally proposed to be through from a Frontenac all the way to Albert Street.
Okay.
And if you, in this area right here,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna skip up to the front. So if you can see faintly the red line around the edge, that's the property line. And you can also see here that the rear lane actually traverses onto the neighboring property at 505 and 513 Frontenac Street, or sorry, Albert Street. So that is something that'll have to be recognized through an easement and registered on title to make sure that that may continue in the future, and the applicant would be responsible for submitting that application.
All right, so the streets are Albert and Frontenac are connected by that lane? Are they connected?
That's right, as it's
I just
currently.
don't see it. Can you show me by a pen how it goes, how it flows or not? Yeah, it goes there.
So here's Albert Street.
Yeah.
Comes across, connects here, through, and then underneath this
Oh,
portion of the building, out
underneath.
over to here.
I see it now, okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Did I understand you correctly that it'll be over 100 bicycle parking spaces that are underground, but you're also proposing some at grade, above ground bicycle spaces, probably for customers of the retail spaces? Was that accurate? They weren't included in that 100 and some bicycle parking spaces that you were referring to, were they?
You're correct in that a portion of the required on-site parking, bicycle parking, may be located outside of the building, uncovered. And in the draft bylaw, it's written to say that a maximum of 25% may be outside. My math isn't good enough to do 25% of 359, but that would be the max number permitted outside. The rest would be required to be on the ground floor of the main building in a secure bicycle room or underground parking levels 1 or 2.
And those above ground would have some kind of security, like it wouldn't just be because there's a lot of bicycle theft that takes place in the University District and along Princess Street.
Yes, through you, absolutely. They would be a more typical outdoor bike rack that you would see, the metal that you can chain your bike to. I just have a site plan drawing here somewhere I can probably pull up. But so you can, so along Princess Street, these little squares are proposed to be 4 bicycle parking spaces that are secured with the metal bike racks.
And again, I want to thank you and staff for the neighborhood meeting at the Memorial Center just this week, and the developers for presenting that. I guess something that came up at that meeting, and I'm just looking for public confirmation here, was the idea that in accordance with the community benefit that may flow out of this, that there will be an immediate neighborhood meeting, consultation, that to consider how that money should be spent. So the affected neighborhood will have an opportunity to weigh in on what they hope to see that money being spent.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so it is our intention to facilitate a public session specifically to look at how to best utilize the money that's going to be collected through the community benefits towards a greening strategy for the area, and we're just looking at the best way to facilitate that. We will be doing that prior to a site plan approval so that the community has the confidence related to understanding how that's going to be implemented.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And those are all of my questions prior to opening it up for the public. So if there are no further questions from the committee, I'll ask members of the public who wish to speak.
Joan Bowie, 414 Albert Street. Thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this project. It really has evolved a lot. I, as you know, am preoccupied with the traffic flow. So I have been assured that there will be no stopping in front of the building, that students, packages, garbage, everything will go through the rear lane, which does concern me to some extent because we have one very small, what I see as a small opening onto Frontenac Street. And things like how often the garbage comes and so on and so forth, I believe will be something that will be studied. So I remain very concerned about how that opening is going to take the traffic and about the people who are going to live above that are going to be exposed to garbage truck noise, car noise. I mean, I don't know if this is something that can be, I don't know how you fix something like that. I hear the garbage truck and it doesn't come underneath my bedroom. So I think that is a valid concern that really needs to be looked at. I would prefer to see that open to the, not covered with living space. I also am curious from these drawings, I couldn't quite figure out the space at the Albert Street end. I heard last night or Tuesday night that there would be enough space there for a patio, that if there was a coffee shop or something there, and yet it looked to me like it comes to the lot line, but I don't know if that's the upper floors or the ground floor, so maybe planner could answer that. And I'm just curious, will this come back, bumped up to, will site plan be bumped up in this case? So those are my major questions. Thank you very much.
I can say that I intend to, and it'll be a motion through council, but I intend to request a bump up of site plan.
Thanks.
Thank you for your questions. The determination of where exactly the garbage will be picked up, brought to the curb, how that all will work on site has yet to be determined. So through the bumped up site plan application, it is something that we will work closely with our solid waste division to understand truck flow patterns and which street even, Frontenac versus Albert versus Princess, may be used to collect the garbage. The setback along Albert Street, as well as the setback along Princess Street, is 1.9 meters at grade. The 1.9 meter at grade setback exceeds the required setback that's prescribed in the bylaw. It's 1 meter, and it allows then for the upper stories, 2 through 4, to project back out and over that recessed at grade level and provide an area of pedestrian refuge from wind or rain. So the commercial space, I may have a it's envisioned that there will be substantial space for an access, ingress, egress for the commercial unit along the Albert Street frontage, as well as the Princess Street frontage for that commercial unit in the western portion or the western end of the building. And Councillor Neal answered the bumped up site plan question.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to staff and the developers this week who took part in the session at the Memorial Center 2 nights ago. I attended, and it was very helpful. We learned a lot of it. There was excellent interchange of ideas, and a lot of questions got answered there. So I'm going to start off by praising the improvements in the project since it first came forward almost 2 years ago. I think that the less massing, the improved design, and just the sort of being more attractive overall, I think we've really advanced a lot there. So I'm going to praise everybody who was involved with that. Second thing I'm going to praise in detail is the realization that the smaller apartment sizes, of which you're including a high proportion in the project, I see that that's an A+ aspect, because I think that particular style of accommodation is very much needed in Kingston. So I'm hoping that the project succeeds and that there'll be very good demand for those units. Okay, then I'm going to move into, I think in one of the slides you showed that there'd be a transit shelter just on the, sort of the northwest corner of the project. And I would suggest one as well, if we could have one on the stop that's actually kitty corner to that, because you're looking at 300 or 400 new residents going in there, and I use that stop a lot. And when you're in raining or snowing, it is kind of annoying, so that's just a minor point. Now I'm going to move into an area of concern which I expressed at the meeting on Tuesday night, and which has been talked about already. So I guess point number one would be the church has been there since, I guess it's the 50s or 60s, and the proximity of the new project with respect to the church is very close. So I've got some concern over just the safety of the construction as you're doing the project, if it goes ahead, with the underground parking and so forth. So I want to put that on the record. Okay, the next one is the access egress aspect, which the previous citizen was speaking about. And I want to just hit another aspect of that from more of an urban design perspective. We've got another very large project which has been approved just to the northeast of this project site on Frontenac Street. And they're actually clearing the land there. They're taking down buildings and so forth. And it is also going to have underground parking accessed from Frontenac Street. So you're going to have two similar access egress aspects very close together. And that concerns me in a neighborhood that's otherwise fairly quiet and residential. And I'm speaking both as a resident who lives about 4 blocks away and also as a retired tech person who's done some traffic, and so forth analysis, back in the day. I didn't do it in my career, but as a student, I did that. So that really concerns me. You're going to have several hundred new vehicles coming in and out of there. And I think that's a really complex situation you're getting there. So I think that needs to be more examination of that.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just in terms of a detail, can we have a number on the physical separation distance between that project's access egress and this one? It isn't on any of the slides. And I would suggest finally a few bicycle walking stalls on Princess Street. Just sort of the standard size the city already has, because that makes it easier for people who are using the facility, either they're visiting or they're using the stores that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to address any of those comments or questions?
Sure. Yep. Through you, Mr. Chair. This slide here actually illustrates the proposed transit stop at the, I won't call it the corner, the intersection of Albert Princess, but just very close proximity to that. And through this process and through the site plan process, the applicant is required to convey a portion of land in that area to the municipality to ensure that there is ample space to develop that transit stop with a full shelter. Comment has been noted in regards to the concern from excavation for underground parking garages to the close proximity of the buildings. It's something that the applicant is aware of. It's something that staff are aware of, and it will be monitored through any pre-development and through the construction phases should the application be approved. I don't have a number off the top of my head in terms of the proximity of the ingress-egress lane on Frontenac Street as it relates to the ingress-egress lane of the project at 495 Frontenac Street across the street. I do acknowledge the fact that they are in close proximity and it is a substantial amount of new vehicles to Frontenac Street as opposed to the current situation. The projects in the corridor have all been reviewed from a transportation perspective, which has been included, have been peer reviewed, and there is ongoing work with our transportation group and our active transportation group through an updated active transportation master plan, I believe. My colleagues can probably provide much more insight into that, and those types of traffic movements and pedestrian movements will be reviewed through that process. And the last comment that I have noted is the secure bicycle parking along Princess Street. It is something that the applicant has been considering through the process and will ensure it's instilled through the site plan control process.
Thank you. Further questions?
Very good. Thank you very much. Laurie Kaufman, 5 Oakwood Crescent. I'm also a landlord. I've got about 40 units on Frontenac Street, so I know the parking situations. I know the traffic patterns, and I've watched I've tried to get on Princess Street the way it is for I guess I've lived there for 18 years. Number one, I guess that my first question is, again, that lane at the back, I'm curious about how wide it is. Is it a lane 1.5 across, or is it 2 across, or is it a single one? And how big that opening is. If you're looking, I'm a landlord, so I look at things from a very practical point of view. There's a lot of, there's hundreds of regs, and to me, it all really I do it backwards, looking at the amount of parking and the garbage. Really the things that people have to live with every day. So let's take a real quick look at 359 units. I think the assumption here by the developer, or what's being put forward, is that small one-bedrooms, people won't come with cars. I say it's the exact opposite. People that can afford a one-bedroom apartment, they're coming with a car. It's not going to be 52%. When I was talking with the developer, who, by the way, I've loved everything that he's built in this city, and I was really excited to find out when I learned that he was the one that was buying up the Princess Street frontage, and then when others developers were given high density, of course, why the heck should he go back to following the regulations? However, so 359 units. And they're only wanting 218 spaces. I know, talking with a developer, and from my experience up the street, where I have I have people who have been there for 50 years, who don't have cars. I've got students, and I've got a turnover of people who are there 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. And I can tell you, I would say the minimum that you are going to want is about 0.66. And then if you reverse that backwards, and you do it by bedrooms, you don't do it by apartments. I think does the city or do the city now not recognize that because the people were putting 5 and 6 bedrooms in an apartment and then requiring only one spot, that they now look at it differently? Well, this is all one bedroom. And bachelors. So I really, really would suggest to the planning committee, because we're planning here, planning for the next 50 to 100 years. And I can tell you, I feel very certain that as soon as this is built, we're going to have, and it was alluded to, we're going to have 400 cars being added to 2-lane Princess Street. I've spent like 5 and 6 minutes getting onto Princess Street when I lived on Frontenac. And so here you're not only adding 400 cars between the Patry development and this development, but you're looking all up and down the street. Now, I remember over 20 years ago, I had a hard time getting a triplex put in here. So I believe in density. I was for one of the first ones to push it, but really, I really advise that we really be very strict on that.
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Oh, we've got a time limit. And of course, parking stall, and to just show the fact that the thing is too dense, the parking size has gone from 2.7 to 2.6, and from 6 meters in depth to 5.2 meters, which is, I was just in Korea, and I can tell you, they know how to do density, but this proposal isn't it. My time is done. I got more to say. We didn't even talk about garbage. I'd really be interested to know where the garbage and recycling goes.
Thank you very much. And some of those, of course, are site plan issues. And if I can recommend anybody who speaks publicly, if 5 minutes cuts you off and you still have something to say, please put it in writing and send it to our planning staff, and it'll be put forward as official correspondence. Thank you. And I'll let you address those comments and questions.
Pardon me. I was just trying to find the floor plan, ground floor plan, site plan drawing to start off by answering the rear width or the width of the rear lane. It's very small. It is a two-way traffic rear lane, which would be a minimum of 6.0 meters in width. And that extends, as you can see in the right, top right corner, that does extend out underneath that area of the building that is proposed to project over that lane. So the drive-through component area of that lane is consistent with the width of the entire rear lane. Next comment I noted was in regards to the parking. Our current bylaw regulates on-site parking based on a per unit basis. This application, when it was originally submitted, calculated its parking based on a per bedroom basis. Since that time, the application has been amended and more on-site parking has been included, and the rationale or the supporting information, as well as the peer review work that was done by the external people at Dillon Consulting, reviewed both the unit count of 359 as well as the bedroom count of 565, and deemed the on-site parking of 218 spaces to be appropriate at the 0.52 ratio. That's also to consider a parking ratio of one parking space per 150 square meters of commercial space that's proposed in the building as well. I do want to mention that in the draft bylaw that staff have prepared for the recommendation, both the number of dwelling units, 359, as well as the number of bedrooms, 565, are capped in the in the bylaw, to ensure that the parking ratio cannot change to go any further in the direction of less on-site parking for more increased units. The size reduction is the next comment that I've noted down, 2.6 by 5.2. It's the bylaw currently proposes or requires, a 2.7 by 6.0 parking stall, and it's very consistent, as you saw with the presentation earlier tonight on King Street, that an accepted norm is 2.6 in width and a 5.2 stall depth. Granted that the access aisle to service and get vehicles in and out of that shortened parking stall is 6 meters in width. So if that access aisle is not that 6 meters in width, it's very, very difficult to get that maneuverability. The applicant, through this submission, underground level 2, 1, and grade, it does comply with that 6 meter minimum width. The last comment I have noted down is related to garbage and recycling. At grade, in the ground floor, there is dedicated garbage rooms, recycling rooms, but how that'll work with pickup, to my comment previously, I don't know in detail at this time. It's something that would be considered through site plan control. I don't know.
I'll give him the option of having heard that or not.
Can I revisit that later while I try and find it?
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I just want to speak very quickly because Joan brought up an interesting thing that was brought up before at the public meeting as well. As I understand it, one of the things that I really, really supported about through the whole Williamsville study was the idea that we were going to be building one block developments like this with a rear lane, because the one thing I hate driving down Princess Street, Lower Princess Street in the mornings is the number of trucks that park all day long all the way down the street. And so the idea of a rear laneway and full service to the commercial ground floor from the rear, I think is a really, really positive idea. And as I understand it, the concern I think that Ms. Bowie expressed on Tuesday was about pizza deliveries, Ubers, all of those vehicles parking along Princess Street. I would hope that Princess Street would be a no-stop zone, and then it's an enforcement issue, not a building issue. But could you explain, as I understand it, there's a rear entrance, it's a kind of through entrance to the building, and pizza deliveries, move-in, move-outs, those kinds of things could be accommodated from the rear laneway. Could you speak to that, if you would?
Certainly. Through you, I just want to clarify and get the answer to the gentleman who is seeking the size of the garbage room. 1,550 square feet, approximately 145 square meters, is the garbage room that's proposed at grade in this location right here, which will segue into my next comment. It's abutting the loading space at the back, and the main pedestrian entrance from Princess Street is here at the front of the building, coming into the vestibule for the building, the elevator shaft in this location over here, and all of these having direct access out the back to that rear lane, and the surface parking at grade. The loading spaces, as I mentioned, are here. The underground, I don't know if you can hear, and the spaces for short-term pizza delivery, drop-offs, pickups, taxis are all here at the rear of the building, with direct access into each of these commercial units as well. So any if it happened to be programmed with a cafe, they can have all those deliveries at the rear of the building as well.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, we'll go back to the committee. Did you have any further questions to ask? Yes, Councillor Turner.
I would just like to make a comment, and I'd like to thank the builder for putting in the 45-degree angular plane. I think that was really outstanding. And I'd like to thank them for all their hard work, and I look forward to reducing the vacancy rate in Kingston. So thank you.
I will enter a shaker to put this on the floor. Councillor Turner, Councillor Sanik. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I just want to say a couple of people have spoken to me about a bump up of site plan, and so many of the questions that seem to concern people tonight have everything to do with site plan and less to do with building design. I do want to say that I'm very, this has evolved enormously from the very first presentation that we received several years ago. I think peer reviews have been taken to heart, and the fact that you reached out to Mr. Todderan, and as I understand it, all of his kind of recommendations or suggestions indeed were adopted, which I appreciate. So I still think that there's going to be some serious questions asked at site plan, and I'm looking forward to seeing that site plan coming forward. But I too am happy that on one of the faces it's a 45-degree angular plane, and that the extreme angular planes on the other, on the Albert side and the Princess Street side, have been reduced somewhat, and I do like the breakup, the way that you've broken down the facing of it. It does, I think, reduce what was a much more overwhelming kind of look of the building as far as density goes. So I appreciate that, and I've gone from a design I said I could never support, to a design that I said, ooh, it looks better, to a design that I can support. So thank you. I will resume the chair, which I should have given over. Sorry. So, seeing no further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And I'll be seeking a seconder for a bump up at council. And I believe that process will take place after the motion the recommendation from planning goes to council. It can either be the same day in motions following that process. Okay, thank you. So, we have one more. I've lost my place. Thank you. D has to do with 2666 Princess Street and 1027 Midland, and it's file number D14037 2017. And there is a recommendation before us. Any comments from staff, or should we go right into questions from the committee? Let's do that. So, any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, excuse me. We will, if there's anybody in the public that would like to speak to this, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question, and I want to be just clarified on this. Looking at the illustrations in the report, we have access and egress from both Midland and Princess Streets on the project without a connection between the two, right? We've got building aspects separating the access egress off both Princess and Midland. I just want to clarify that. Is that the case? And that's the end of my question.
Looking at the site plan before the committee accompanying the recommendation, there is a second access over the McDonald's property abutting the site, and there would be easements set into place to facilitate cross-access from Princess Street over to Midland. In terms of the Midland Street access, the applicant is showing a right-in and right-out only for that access. That was as a result of the traffic impact study that was prepared in support of the application, reviewed by our traffic division, and the applicant will be required to design and pay for those improvements to address a traffic concern at that location.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions from the floor, so if we have a mover, I think Councillor Rosanek and Councillor Turner. Any further comments or questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. And we have no motions. We have no notices of motion. Just a notice of motion for a bump up, and no other business and correspondence. is as we've received it, and it's now public. And the date and time of the next meeting is June 21st, 6:30 p.m. in this room. So I would love, there's a hockey game and an election going on. If somebody would care to move adjournment, that would be great. Pick of the litter. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.